What's up, my fellow emo, pop, punk, metalcore music lovers? Matrix here, and you are locked into the Matrix Music Review Podcast, the only place to get your alt-rock music fix. And we are back with another review episode, and it's been a little bit. I was letting that Billie Eilish and 21 Pilots pod kind of run its course a little bit. I wanted to see kind of what everybody was feeling on it, and it's definitely been some mixed reviews here and there, but I think it was still a fun one nonetheless. In the time that I let that podcast run, I don't know what the hell happened in the alt-rock music community, but everybody decided to release an album. Everybody decided to put out new singles, so I am very behind on some of these reviews that we got to do. And so with that being said, there are about 15, 16 albums that I'm going to review over the course of the next 3 podcasts. So I'm going to break it up into 3 smaller podcasts because I know that everybody likes when they have multiple different ones. And these 3 podcasts are going to lead straight into our mid-year episode, which is all about the best music of the year so far, best songs, who's done what, some of my favorite tours that I've seen. That's going to be coming up within the next week or 2 as well, so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, you're going to get 3 episodes of album reviews, so I'm looking forward to doing that for you, and we're going to start with this one today with about 5 different albums that we've listened to over the past couple of weeks, so get ready for that. As always, every link that you need to follow me on any social medias is in the description of this episode. You can catch me on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok at Matrix Music Review. Make sure you're following us on Apple Music, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're on Apple Music or Spotify, leave a 5-star review. And as I always do, make sure that you are sharing this podcast with your friends, family, whoever it may be. Make sure that we are continuing to grow our little community of alt-rock music lovers. So with that, we're going to jump right into our album reviews. And the first album we're going to talk about is Falling for Robots and Wishing I Was One by LOLO. So this is LOLO's first full-length album that we're getting. And this is an artist that I've been really interested in since I really dove into this catalog last year. And I think a lot of people probably will listen to LOLO and say that it is Olivia Rodrigo, it is Avril Lavigne, it is all those different types of comparisons, and I think they're reasonable. And I think the biggest thing that stands out to me when it comes to this album from LOLO is that there is such an edge to it that really gives it such a great personality and gives it that relatability that I think all of us look for when we listen to music a little bit. And it starts right away with a song like Oh My God or OMG. And the edginess is felt right away in that with lines like taste the puke in my mouth or want the shit to go away. You know, there's no sugarcoating of anything on this album. And I think that's why I liked it so much, is that sometimes artists can try to dance around and not be kind of themselves. But I feel like we get to really learn who LOLO is as an artist and as a person throughout this entire album, because there's just this openness just to say whatever the fuck we want to say and not care about what the repercussions are going to be, or not care about somebody not liking that this is what's being said. And I've talked about singles on the podcast before from LOLO. Faceplant was one that was in my top from last year, still one of my favorites. And another song that was released as a single, Two of Us, has such a cleverness behind it that I think may get underappreciated or missed in some of that if you don't pay attention to what's being said. You know, about this whole drunk call answering, and the line in it that really stood out to me was, I think it's the second verse that starts with it. It says, "Don't worry, darling, you still make me wet when the tears roll down my cheeks." And that is just so clever. And I've never heard that specific line used before. And I think that's what makes it so fun as well, is that you never know what you're going to get. You never know what the next song is going to bring, but you always know that it's going to be something new and something fresh, and it's going to make you think a little bit. And it's not always going to be the same thing. I think this album does a really good job of getting a nice flow to it, in the sense that you have some of these sounds and some of this music behind it that has kind of a sullen feel to it. And then you have these angsty, edgy lyrics that go with a mid-tempo or up-tempo song. So when I say something like that, it probably doesn't make a lot of sense, because Those things shouldn't go together at all, but it works so perfect and flows so well on an album like this, which is why I had such a good time with it. And also just the relatability of tracks on this album made me really appreciate it as well. On a song like Wish I Was a Robot, it's all about not really wanting to have feelings and wanting to be like a robot. That's extremely relatable. Sometimes when we're in shitty situations, we don't want to feel what we're feeling. So being a robot would be great. We wouldn't have to feel anything. Relatability reaches kind of an all-time high on a song like Introspective Thoughts from the Shower. I think we all can feel that song in particular because I've done it. We've all been in the shower, and that's kind of where we have epiphanies and these great thoughts that come to mind. And if we could just stay in there, it feels like nothing would work or nothing could hurt us in there. It's kind of like when you're a kid and you think that when you're in your bed, nothing can touch you, especially that monster that lives under it. But as soon as you step out of it, all games are off. Like all bets are off, game over. You could get in trouble with that. So really cool to hear a song like that because, again, the relatability makes it so much more enjoyable. And the last track I just want to touch on really quick is Kill the Girl, because the creativity in that is really something special. I think we all have situations where, whether you're, texting an ex or, messing around with somebody that is bad news or something like that, you just want to, and it's not a good thing. You always know that that's the wrong decision to make, but you just can't help yourself. And I think this song really touches on that by saying, I want to kill the girl that misses you. I want to kill that person that is doing these things that I know I really don't want to be doing, but I just can't help it. So if I could just get rid of that person, I would feel so much better. So that's just another creative way and another demonstration of why this album for LOLO was so much fun for me to hear. So overall, I think this album was such a great introduction to LOLO as an artist. It was a little bit on the longer side, and I don't think that hurts in this situation, especially knowing that we got a decent amount of singles here. And when people are looking at this artist, I think you can see a more angsty Olivia Rodrigo with some of the musical influences of an Avril Lavigne. And I don't know that you can get much better than those two comparisons. I think those are two pretty strong comparisons. And if you're in this alt-rock scene or you like music from this alt-rock scene, this is absolutely going to be an album for you. So I'm going to go with a 9.1 out of 10 on this album. Really fun, really strong. If you haven't heard it yet, go check out Falling for Robots, Wishing I Was One by LOLO. Next album up is Freaking Out by LowLives. This is the debut album from LowLives, one of the more recent additions to Spine Farm Records. Now, Spine Farm Records is kind of a heavy hitter in the scene because they have acts like Atreyu, Bullet for My Valentine, Dayseeker, Sleep Token, all these different bands already signed to that label. So when you sign to a label like that, the expectations are going to be pretty strong. And going into this album, I had listened to a song or two, and I hadn't really heard much, but this sound is definitely a little more hard rock-esque, and almost in the sense of like a Nirvana sound. And it's a different sound for me. Like, it's not one that I probably gravitate towards a whole lot, but it's definitely one that I was interested to check out. And it's a clean album. There's nothing really crazy about it. There's nothing bad about it. My favorite is probably Closer Than You Know, but honestly, there's not really much that I have to say about this album. There was just nothing that really rose up and kind of stood out. There was nothing that really rose up and made me hate it. So it's just going to fall right in that in-between range for me of a 7.5 out of 10. And I think this is a type of a review that you might hear in some of these other podcasts coming up where I might just not have much to say. Unfortunately, when you have 15, 16 albums to review, you kind of get that burnout. And unfortunately, that happens a lot when you have so many albums to review. And that's not anything bad to say about this LowLives record. Like I said, I liked it. It was very clean, but it just was one that I didn't have much to say about. So I'm not going to try and come up with random things to say just to say them. So 7.5 out of 10, good album, Good debut. Looking forward to more from them. If you haven't heard it yet, go check out Freaking Out by LowLives. Next up, we got an EP. It's Rosemont by Tarnish. This is the second EP from the pop punkers from California, and this was a fun time. This was a band that I discovered last year, and I was really interested to see where they were going to go with different things and what the EP was going to sound like, and it was awesome. I had a great time. This EP, Bite the Knife, is such an interesting song because it's a lot about not forgetting who you are, where you came from, and why you started doing this thing that you love. In this case, for them, it's when they started playing music, but it can definitely be applied to any particular person's walk of life, whether that's, the job that you're in or something that you're really passionate about. But I think my favorite song on this EP is a song called Indebted. Indebted starts off almost a complete opposite of what we've known in this pop punk genre of songs about parents. How many times have we heard a pop punk song basically saying like the parents were never there for them, or they always discouraged them, or they always, they fucked them up basically? Well, this is kind of the opposite. It starts off talking about how grateful they are for them and how much they thank them for kind of getting them to where they are today. But then there's just this little hint at the end of, I guess, disappointment with the way that things were handled and disappointment with the way things ended up. So it's definitely one of those tracks that, because it's just a different spin on things, it stands out and it rises above. And that's why I really liked it and why I enjoyed this EP overall, is that they have such a good sound and such a clean production to them that it's hard not to like what Tarnish is doing. So if you haven't heard it yet, this is going to be a 4.5 out of 5 EP for me. Go check out Rosemont by Tarnish. The next album up is the self-titled album from the early November. This is, I believe, the 7th album from the early November, and if you're not familiar with this band is very much I don't really know how to describe the genre other than I'm saying emo/soft punk genre. I mean, they almost have this Secondhand Serenade, Dashboard Confessional type of sound, but it's very introspective and it's very lyric heavy in the sense that that's what you're going to be looking at most when you listen to a band like the early November. And that's a band that I really gravitate towards. And this album has some of the best songwriting I've heard on an album all year this year. About Me really hits that message of kind of feeling alone, and that a person's thinking about you even though they left you on red. And that's an interesting take, because a lot of people see a message on red and they're like, oh, that person's not thinking about me. Oh, they don't care about me. But they cared enough to open the message. So it kind of leaves that little hint of doubt in your head. And that's something I never really thought about. I mean, I haven't had to think about something like that in a very long time. But if you're a person that always looks to see if, they read my message or have they sent me something back, and you see that it's on red, a lot of times you're going to get discouraged. But in this particular track, they're like, maybe it's not a bad thing. Maybe they are thinking about you, at least enough to open the message. If they didn't think about you at all, they wouldn't open it at all. They wouldn't care. So this is another way that it shows the songwriting and the thought-provoking nature of an album like this. I think my favorite track on this album is The Fool, because it's just so wonderfully written, and I don't know that there's any other way to describe it other than it's just lyrical perfection. And this lyrical exhibition goes on throughout this entire album. The album ender, It Will Always Be, has some of those cool lines on there that really kind of make you think. It has a line that says, you can't change what you can't let go. And another one that says, I used to wish that we would grow old, and now it feels like we did, but God, something must be on our side. And those two lines in particular really make you think, because growing up in a alt-rock music scene, a lot of songs we heard about where, nothing's on our side, or we got to worry about growing up. People say we're never going to make it, or things like that. And a song like this is basically demonstrating that, like, yeah, we made it. And we used to say that we were going to grow old together, and we did. So there must be something on our side that did it. And if you can't change what you can't let go of, that's another line that basically is saying, like, you have to let go of things sometimes to make that change that you want in your life. You may not want to, it may be difficult to do, but in order to make that change, you have to let things go. And look, I don't have much to say about this album because I was so fully immersed in this listening experience and just trying to catch every line, every word, every phrase that was just so well done and so well written that it was hard for me to sit there and listen for the purpose of coming up with a review. It doesn't happen too often, but in a case like this where I really don't have to pay too much attention to the musical side of things because it's just very, I don't want to say simple and make it sound like there's not any depth to the music, because there is, but when I'm so focused and locked in on the lyricism side, it's really hard to come up with a lot of different things to say. But what I will say is that if you are a songwriting junkie like me and you're really interested in seeing what lyrics are and really relating to them, this is an album that you're going to absolutely love. This is a 9.2 out of 10 for me from the early November. So if you haven't heard it yet, go check out the self-titled album from the early November. And the last album we're going to talk about on this podcast is The End by Your Broken Hero. This album is nostalgia overload to the T. It is an instant emo kid vibe that it's hard to ignore. And this was an album that just kind of came out of nowhere to me. I don't know why it wasn't on my radar. I don't know why I didn't remember this artist, because this is someone that I've been really happy with everything that's been released, but for some reason it just didn't register that this was an album that was coming soon. So when I turn this album on and I get a song, Tommy's Face, that I completely forgot about, I was just blown away. Doesn't happen often that there's songs that you just completely forget about and then they come back and you're like, holy fuck, where did that song go? Why did I forget that that was one of my favorites? That's exactly what happened with Tommy's Face. And even more so, I think that really solidified something for me. Spencer Chamberlain needs to be featured on more songs, because this is not the first time we've heard from Spencer Chamberlain this year. Obviously, there was a feature on a Bring Me the Horizon song that was really strong. And there's just something about the delivery from Spencer that makes it and really elevates a song. He really has this ability to elevate a song into the next level like other artists really can't. I haven't really noticed an artist that's been doing features that does what Spencer Chamberlain's doing. There's a lot of features on this album, and I think they all do what they're supposed to do. Obviously, we have the Pierre feature from Simple Plan, and we have a Newfound Glory feature that has always been great, and I think the features really help elevate this album as well. But even a song like Pamela is just this hilarious ode to everybody's first crush, or that poster in your room on your wall of your very first celebrity crush. Everybody had one. Everybody has this person. And the fact that they're using Pamela here is just the funniest thing to me. And then you also have a song that's Girl Like You, which it to me, it's like a Breathe Carolina track time traveled into 2024 and was released for us. This is perfectly aligned with what I would have expected a Breathe Carolina song to sound like back in 2008 or whenever. But this is such a fun album. I mean, it's very short. I think it's only 8 songs or so, but it does everything that it came to do. It came there to give you that instant feeling of nostalgia. It came there to be a emo pop punk record, and it didn't want to do anything different. And that's what made it so special. This is a 9 out of 10 album for me. It was one of my favorites that I've listened to. So if you haven't heard it yet, go check out The End by Your Broken Hero. That wraps it up for our album reviews here. But what I want to touch on really quick is, because there were so many albums and this is getting broken up into 3 separate podcasts, there are albums that I did listen to that are just not going to get mentioned at all. You know, I mentioned an album like LowLives because I do think it's important to mention it, that I listened to that one on a little bit greater of a scale to be able to at least give it a rating, even though I'm not going into super depth about what's going on. And that's going to happen on some of the other ones down the road. But there were albums that I listened to that I just could not write a review on. I don't think you guys want to hear me babble on for hours and hours and hours about every last album that's been released over the past 3-4 weeks, however long it's been. So there were some albums that are going to get skipped. On Lap, Rarity, The Dangerous Summer, Voila. These are all albums that I listened to that are all good in their own way, but they're just not going to get a full album review. There's not much I can say about it. There's not any rating that I'm going to give to them, so I'm just not even going to talk about them. But I do want to mention that they were listened to. If, you know, somebody really bangs the table and says, hey, I really need a review of that, sure, then I'll do it. But with the way we're at in the year, there's just no need to review those types of albums. So that's going to wrap it up here on Matrix Music Review for this first episode of a few that you're going to get on album reviews. I hope everybody enjoyed, and I will see you next time with another album review episode.